Hello and welcome to Nightlight's Orientation to Individualized Country Programs. If you are adopting through this program, it means that you are adopting from a country where we are providing you with a primary provider service, but in a country where we don't fully have an established adoption program. Once you view this video, a follow-up telephone call will be scheduled with one of your ICP team members to allow us to get to know you better and to answer any questions you may have concerning the material presented in this webinar. When you have received the ICP orientation email, you probably noticed it had many links to additional information. I urge you to save that email, bookmark it, print it, or whatever you need to do to keep it around, because it will be required to access the checklist as you complete your parent education and prepare your dossier, and may need to refer to some of this information. In order to access the checklist in our portal, you will need to sign in using the same email and password you created when you first filled out your application. There is a link posted here and in the email for password help should you require it. We will be discussing several items to help get you started on your adoption journey, and hopefully by the end of the talk, you will have a better grasp on all that is required and an idea of where you need to start. I promise you will feel quite overwhelmed, but there are ways to break the process into parts so it seems more manageable. Today we go over Hague orientation topics, talk about choosing a home study provider, touch on parent education, discuss filing the I-600A/I-600 with the USCIS, which is United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. We are explaining the service plan as well and dossier instructions for the country you have chosen to adopt to if they are applicable. I will begin by introducing myself and telling you a little about our agency. My name is Samantha Brown, and I've worked in adoption for about 2 years now. Currently, I am a program coordinator of the Indiana office and assist with Burkina Faso program, which is managed from the Indiana office. Nightlight has been in operation since the 1950s. In addition to many international programs, they also offer domestic adoptions, home study services, foster programs, and have also pioneered the Snowflakes embryo adoption program. The Indiana office was formerly known as MLJ Adoptions. They had many programs throughout the world and choose to carry some of these programs over to Nightlight in March of 2020. The best way I found to go through the documents is to have you open the ICP orientation email, open the orientation document checklist, and I will go through each document explaining its purpose and talking about specifics. Please be sure to write down any questions you may have so that our ICP staff can answer them during the follow-up phone call. The first document I want you to open is the Hague orientation topics. It is important that you read this document thoroughly, regardless of whether or not the country you are in adopting is signatory to the Hague Adoption Convention or not. I'm going to hit some of the highlights as well. Anyone who is adopting internationally must have an approved home study, apply to receive a pre-approval to adopt from the United States through USCIS, and prepare a set of documents called a dossier, which will be submitted to the Central Adoption Authority in the country that you are adopting for approval. Your dossier tells the adoption authority that about you and your family. Different countries require different documents, so that's why the dossier instructions will be specific to your country. In some ICP cases, the dossier process will not be applicable, especially if you have already completed your adoption or guardianship in the country. Most children awaiting adoption in abroad countries are institutionalized. Some of them are in foster care, and there are different types of fostering situations which are described in the Hague orientation topic document. Any time that a child is in less than optimal care, they are at a risk for malnourishment, delays in any or all areas of development, unhealthy living conditions, sickness, and abuse that may include emotional, physical, and/or sexual abuse. These children have trauma in their backgrounds from abandonment, inconsistent caregiving, and substandard care. This is why parent education is an important part of your adoption process to help you prepare for your child's needs when they come home. Children awaiting adoption may reside in either an orphanage or foster care. In general, children residing in orphanages may be considered to be well cared for and sometimes fairly healthy. However, this highly depends on the country in which the child is residing. Children being cared for in orphanages are typically given less than one-on-one attention and can develop attachment issues. They are also more likely to be delayed in development. Families should expect that a child will be approximately 4 months delayed for every year he or she is in an orphanage setting. The most current laws and adoption processes applicable in the country you are adopting from can be found on the Department of State's website. Department of State has an acronym which is usually DOS. If you ever hear anyone reference Department of State by that name, that's just a heads up. But anyways, eligibility requirements can be found on the U.S. Department of State website, and the eligibility requirements may change from time to time, and Nightlight remains updated at all times. So there's no reason for our application. That is one reason for our application form that it asks so many questions. It's because we want to ensure that you are eligible to adopt from the country program that you desire. The trend and climate of the intercountry adoptions has declined by almost 70% since 2004. The reason for this decline is a result of the shift in political acceptance of intercountry adoption. Most nations navigate two opposing forces, trying to accommodate adoptive parents and the needs of orphans while also satisfying powerful anti-adoption influences. The increasing difficulty in adopting internationally is actually intentional and meant to reduce the number of adoptions. The motive behind the anti-adoption movement is complicated, but includes national pride, political retaliation, and a well-meaning but naive desire to prefer indigenous orphan care solutions. It is important to note that our agency has no control over the rate at which referrals are made by adoption officials. While many children with special needs are available, agencies have no control over the condition or the medical conditions that will affect the length of time you may wait for a match. The more open a family's criteria for their child, the more quickly they will be matched compared to families who request a very young female with minor special needs. And this only applies to if you don't already have a relative or identified child. Finally, there may be a travel advisory applicable to the country you're adopting from. Please read over DOS's travel advisory website to prepare for your visit to pick up your children and bring them home. Adoption travel can be expensive depending on where you book the flight. Our team will assist you with this as well as your travel plans, with any travel plans regarding lodging, transportation, guides, and translators if you shall need them. Now let's talk about post-adoption reports. Each country has a different requirement for post-adoption reporting, and we will advise you what the requirements are. A social worker will come to your home to complete these post-adoption requirements. Post-adoption obligations should be taken very seriously. Our agency is held personally responsible for the supervision of your placement. It is very important that you comply with reporting, as adoption programs are placed in jeopardy when families do not fulfill their obligation. Failure to complete post-adoption reporting puts our programs at risk and may prohibit future families from adopting an orphan child. Please take note that we have strongly worded language regarding post-adoption obligations in the agreements that you have signed for our agency, which allows us to take you to court for non-compliance. While we haven't had to file a court case, we have had to send letters reminding families of their promise. It is also important to note that the U.S. Department of State enforces post-adoption compliance. Failure to comply will also affect any plans you have to adopt in the future. One last thing regarding Hague topics. No fees should ever be paid to a foreign supervised provider, an adoption central authority, and or any other person involved in your adoption case in a foreign country without written permission from your nightlight coordinator. Historically, this has not been a problem, but with most countries, but if you are asked to pay any fee in country that is not outlined in your adoption fee schedule, please notify our office immediately. The bribes are strictly prohibited and will be reported to the U.S. Department of State. I think I've gone over mostly everything in this document. ICP sometimes has different documents depending on the country that you are adopting from, so this is just something that's going to be talked about in our follow-up orientation phone call, and if there are any differences in any of these slides that we go over in this slideshow presentation, then we'll also talk about those differences if need be. Next, we will talk about choosing a home study provider. Nightlight is your placing agency for your adoption. If you live in a state where we have an office, we will also be your home study agency. If you live outside our service area, you must choose a home study provider. It is imperative that your home study agency is Hague or COA accredited. If you live in a state served by Nightlight, you will soon to be contacted by that office to begin the home study process. If you do not, there is more information to help you locate a Hague accredited provider in the orientation email. You can click on the link where a list of Hague accredited home study agencies are listed by your state, or you may contact Natalie, the social services assistant in our Indiana office, and have her give you the list of home study providers we have worked with in the past year, or we have worked in the past for your state. Her contact information will be listed on the orientation email. Finally, once your application has been accepted by the home study provider agency, please complete and upload the home study provider information sheet in the international orientation checklist. It is very important that you return this before you begin the home study process. The first reason is because Nightlight must have an exempt provider agreement in place with the agency prior to beginning the home study. And secondly, we will ensure the home study is Hague accredited. This is a very important note. If you begin the home study process prior to providing Nightlight with your home study provider information, you may have to choose another provider, which could result in losing any monies you paid to the previous provider. Once your home study is completed, which can take anywhere from 2 to 4 months or longer, depending on how quickly you and your social worker are able to obtain documentation, you will be ready to file Form I-600A or I-600, depending on where you are in your process with USCIS. The link to that form can be found here. However, if you watch the dossier instruction, if you have read the dossier instruction guide, you will know that our team will mail you the current link to the form with instructions to help you fill it out once you are ready for the step. With that being said, you don't really need to do anything with this document. It is just a link to a form that you can use later in the process. Once you have received the orientation email and open the portal, you have access to an orientation document checklist as well, the orientation document checklist, as well as a separate checklist for international parent education documents. A link was provided to a webinar explaining Nightlight's parent education requirements. If you have not yet watched this, you must do so that your parent education will not be delayed. As a recap, all adoptive families are required to complete 10 hours of Hague education prior to completing their home study. Burkina Faso also requires at least 10 hours of education as well. In addition, Nightlight has additional requirements that consist of reading about and understanding post-adoption stress and depression, completing a post-adoption support plan, learning the history and culture of your child's country, speaking with a parent who has previously adopted from the same country through Nightlight, and reading a book called The Connected Child. You will end up with more than 10 hours of education to help prepare you from parenting the adopted child. Again, this is not going to be applicable to everyone, but this is the document that I want to bring to your attention. It's a document that is used to identify your preferences for a child as to gender, age range, and medical needs. It is important to understand that this document may be updated throughout the process to adjust your preferences as you continue being educated about adoption, talking to others who have adopted children with specific needs, and meeting with medical professionals to determine what you feel you can handle. This form is used by your social worker in writing your approval statement in the home study and by our team as we watch our list in every country for special needs or just a general shared list for children. The service plan is a document that identifies the 6 adoption services that are rendered in inter-country adoptions and who is responsible for each service. Nightlight Christian Adoptions is your primary provider and placing agency for the child you are adopting. As a primary provider, we also coordinate your adoption, help identify a child for adoption, and arrange for that adoption. We work with the agency providing our home study and coordinate with the staff to provide translation and travel arrangements to the country. As your primary service provider, Nightlight is available to assist you whether you are in the United States or traveling abroad. We will be working with the central authority in the country that you are adopting from. They are responsible for identifying children who are available for adoption and arranging the adoptions, and this goes for relative adoptions and identified children as well. They also responsible for securing the necessary paperwork showing the termination of parental rights and agreement to adoption. In most countries, children are eligible for adoption either due to abandonment or relinquishment. Generally, the central authority of that country approves the child's background study, and your home study provider will perform the home study on you as you are the prospective adoptive parent. You will not have direct contact with the central authority in that country. The central authority works with our in-country coordinator to ensure that the laws of the country are being followed with regard to adoptions. On this form, please fill out your name of your home study agency and the phone number as well as a social worker from the agency and their contact information. Nightlight and your home study provider make non-judicial determinations of the best interests of a child and the appropriateness of an adopted placement for the child. The central authority, in conjunction with Nightlight, will monitor a case after a child has been placed with your family until final adoption. Also in this document is a list of contacts at Nightlight who work in the country you are adopting from, as well as our email addresses. Currently, I am the program coordinator for ICP program. Sonia is an international program director, and Natalie is a social services assistant to help with education and post-adoption requirements. Depending on the state you are in, you will also work with Angela for Indiana clients or Debbie for out-of-state clients to assist you with completing the home study. Your adoption or guardianship will be finalized while you are in country. When you return home, you will be expected to continue to work with your home study provider to complete post-adoption reports. If you complete a guardianship in the sending country, you are required to complete a full and final adoption of your child in your state of residence. Your home study provider will visit you at a specified time following the adoption to provide consultation on adjustment, help you identify or problem solve any issues that have arisen, and write a report to send with photos of your child to Nightlight, who will then forward them to your country's central authority. Nightlight also requires families to comply with a 1-month check-in. It is important to know, and you will be reminded of this throughout the process, that if you are struggling with your adoption plan or having adjustment issues with the child when you get home, please contact us and let us help you identify resources to rally your family, friends, church, and other professionals so that they can provide support and guidance to you. We have a post-adoption connection center and ready and are willing to provide resources to all our families. Once you fill in your home study provider information to this document, please sign a date and upload to the portal. The last thing I want to touch on is the dossier instruction booklet. If a dossier applies in your case, you will see it on your client portal. Not always in ICP cases do we require a dossier instruction booklet. But if you do, I trust that you were able to read it, and I encourage you to be in contact with me to discuss any questions you have about it. If you are in a very special circumstance and you don't have or need to do a dossier for your adoption, then I will definitely let you know as well. But I encourage you, like I said, to be in contact with me to discuss any questions, and I will be working with you through the USCIS approval and the dossier phase, and just meeting you where you're at in your individualized country program. To wrap up the orientation, I want to remind you of the checklist on our online portal with some orientation documents you either need to sign and upload or sign electronically. Be sure to watch the video explaining our parent education requirements and look at all the parent education documents under the International Parent Education Checklist in our portal. It is also important that you read the entire booklet, which contains more specific information about the dossier if applicable. You are probably wondering, where in the world do I start and what do I do next? My suggestion is to talk to agencies who are Hague accredited, who can complete your home study. Once you are in contract with them, you can finish the service plan and home study information sheet in the orientation checklist. Make sure that they are approved as your home study provider, and then you can begin your parent education. Do not forget to submit documents as they are completed. In addition, we will always want you to feel free to contact us with any questions, comments, or concerns you may have. This includes the webinar. Please email me, samantha@nightlight.org, after you have watched all of the videos and are ready to have a follow-up orientation phone call. Thank you and enjoy your day.